Hey, Jake here. Welcome to How to Fix Your Art, where you send us broken art, we fix it. Today we have a great piece that we worked on by Anita Okoye. I believe that's how you pronounce it. She made a phenomenal piece, and that was really the challenge here. Lee picked the piece out one of the submissions, and he wanted to pick something that was like 90% there. How do we take something that last 10% to really make it like just slap? Can I use that word? Kids, is that okay? Anyways, both Lee and I did the same piece. You could see Lee's video, how he approached it. You could see in this one how I approach it, and really I focused on primarily composition and character design. So yeah, sit tight. Let's watch it and meet me back here for the outro. The first thing I wanted to talk about was story. Okay, so it's just starting with the story. Like Lee said, what is the story here? And a great way to figure out what the story is if you were out running errands and you saw this happen and you came home from wherever you were and you texted a friend or you talked to your significant other when you got home, how would you describe the scene, the event? And for this one, it would be like, oh, yeah, well, I was out getting groceries. I saw a girl dropping her letter off while her dog just was lazily waiting for her. And whoever you're telling it to would be like, okay, and then what? No, that was it. That's what I saw. And then they'd be like, well, why are you telling me about this? Okay. But I don't think that's bad necessarily, because you have two options as an illustrator. You have the decorative route and you have the narrative route. And we do focus a lot on the narrative route and how important it is that your images tell a story, tell an interesting, you know, beginning, middle, end type of story, or there's like a aha moment in the image, or there's a punchline in the image, and that's great, but not everything has to be so narrative driven. Okay, essentially the difference between these two is if you're going more decorative with your art, it's all about the style and the rendering, and if you're going more narrative, it's all about character and story. And this one kind of threw us off because it has characters in it and it has the start of a story, but I think this one leans, because of the rendering style and the coloring style that's going on here, it leans more in the decorative. And you're in good company here, because I wanted to share some of these artists that do decorative art that are low on story but high on style and design. Okay, so this is Parakid, and you could see here, I was walking home and I saw this girl waiting in the rain with an umbrella. Not a story here, not a strong one, but it's still a beautiful piece, right? There's still something nice about
Well,
this.
that's what I'm said before too, is that if it's a basic story, the other stuff has to be turned up.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what this person's doing. All of these people who have these basic storylines are really nailing the design and the style of it. And this one, again, story here, I was in the grocery store, I saw two people talking about lettuce, right? Nothing big, but it's just beautiful. It's rendered nicely, composition is great. Okay, this one same as well, completely eliminated. It's like a vignette, there's no background, it's just two kids at a newsstand. Okay, now we're getting into this other artist, Sims Art, and these ones do have a little bit more story going for them. And that is, I think that's where you really start to sing as an artist and make art that people start talking about and sharing with others. Is he has these witches that live in Tokyo, or Tokyo suburbs or something like that, and they all have ghost cats, and that's sort of a thing that he's been going through. And so that right there invites a little more story than just a girl going to get a drink. There's a witch world, there's witch graffiti, there's ghost cats surrounding her, she's got a little ghost cat in her backpack. Same with this one. So now that this is like a step up, I think, from what Parakid's doing, where this is so much leaning on decorativeness. This one gets the decorativeness, but adds more story to it. Then we have Loish here, and she's, I think, swings back the other way, where it's very, very beautiful. But again, it's done for the sake of beauty. And if there is a story to it, she's you have to get that story from the artist commentary, right? So this one here, it's a girl in a dilapidated room of some kind with paper scattered all around. This is just asking questions. You look at that and you're all, what, who's this girl? What are the questions? That's one way to go about it, is you don't have to tell a full story. You could just put enough in there that there's questions. But Lois, on this post, she said this is an image about mental health, right? And so you could read into that even more, that all the papers scattered on the ground are, pieces of her life that she has to pick up and put back together. The room could symbolize her life as well, how it's dirty and cracked and there's weeds growing in there. So there's a lot going on in this one. So you can go even, on the face value, it just looks like another decorative piece, but it has a much deeper story than what's going on here because of the symbolism. And then this one is just Lois doing decorative stuff. I'm sure maybe there's a deeper thing in here, but it's absolutely her, like, figuring out how far she can push her style and make it more decorative. Okay, so I just wanted to run through and show examples of how you can do this more beautiful decorative art that's light on story but high on style and design. So that's what we're focused on here. Lee was like, let's go more in the narrative direction. I'm going to say, okay, if we're going to stay in this decorative thing, how do we make this even better? Okay. And so I think the main two problems. I didn't want to talk about rendering, light and shadow, because there's little tweaks you could do here, but it doesn't need an overhaul in the light and shadow, and it doesn't need an overhaul in the rendering approach. Maybe some more love and care could be given to the dog in places, but what it does need overhauled is composition and I think character design. So let's talk about composition first. Okay, I'm going to take all my notes off there, and first things first, I've got the piece here, and I just want to overlay the rule of third grids over the top of this. You could see here that this image favors one side, the left side of the piece and the bottom. It's very lopsided. This is where all the interestingnesses happen, which sometimes is fine. That's okay. You could do that as long as everything else is supporting that and driving our eye towards that. But I don't think any of this other stuff is really helping on that front. So that would be the first thing, is take a look at where all of your characters are, where the focal point is, and is it too lopsided, right? Is it too far on one edge? Second thing would be not enough breathing room on the bottom. It is cropped so tight. And actually the whole piece I just want a little bit more breathing room to it, a little bit more space around it. So I would look at that. And then the third thing would be the leading lines, or the frame lines, are kind of all over the place. And if you look at this draw over here, I'll just zoom in. Like, you have horizontal lines, but they aren't intersecting. There aren't enough of them to really intersect and draw our eyes to the character. You have diagonal lines, but they're kind of going in different directions. You have a dog that's pointed off the page. There's just a bunch of things that are like getting us off the side of the page. And so those all need to be addressed as well. Okay, what you really want is objects to frame the focal point, and then line work to kind of drive you towards the focal point. And I want to show you these examples here of how they're doing that. Okay, so I'm just going to get a draw over sheet here and get my color. So here we have the focal point. It's her face and this character here, and I want you to notice how the perspective, the horizon line right there, cuts right across through her head. All of the perspective lines are taking us to this focal point. Okay, and then framing, we have this thing here drawing our eye down, and then with the yellow and the red being the brightest color, we have nowhere else to look. Our eye has to look right here. Okay, so this is, I mean, it may seem like a simple composition, but everything is drawing us right where we need to look. Okay, same with this one here. We have essentially a 1-point perspective, and it's all drawing our eyes across these characters. But something really brilliant that Parakid did was putting this pull right here. Because what that does is it keeps our eyes from just going off the page, you know? And what it does is it stops us and sort of brings us back into these characters. And we're caught in this like this loop of just going back and forth and really zeroing in on this piece here, on the kind of the focal point of the lettuce there. And then with this one too, leading lines, man. We've got these characters, they're on a third, right? And the head here is more in this section. If we do Lee's thing, you know,
There it is, right
works.
there. Boom.
It's right there. But then also you have all of these books that are just pointing us towards these characters. You have all these lines that kind of go like this, but then you have these characters that break it up right there. So this again is really just expertly done. It may seem simple, but it's really, there's some thought put into compositionally. And then I want to show you here too, Sims is really good about the composition thing too. This is the same exact composition as what's going on here in the grocery store, except one thing that he did, instead of putting a pole right here, he puts this cat, and then we've got these other cats that are kind of circling around. And this is all just designed, same with the shadow here, designed to keep us in this spot right here instead of wanting to go off the page. Okay.
Is this from a book, like a Ghost Cat book or something?
No, these are, I just pulled these off of his Instagram. He may be collecting them in a book.
What a great book that would be. Something.
Yeah.
I love the idea that all your pets are always around you.
Yeah, that's true. They never leave you.
They never leave.
Anyways, and then this one, this is more of a center, a perspective center. Like if we figure from these, or 1 point perspective, if we figure out where the horizon line is, it cuts right through where her head is. So again, subtly, everything is just kind of leading us to this. And then this is the area of the most contrast, right? So that's the kind of stuff you got to think about when you're in the sketching stage, when you're going through and you're figuring out your composition. You should be working at little thumbnail sizes and just going in there and, you know, doing little things like this and figuring out, well, if it's like this and I want to have my character here, and this is not time wasted. You might think I just want to get down to drawing, but this is really where most of the work happens, is at this stage. Okay, so let's address some of these. Okay, first things first, all you got to do is add a couple inches around it, and all of a sudden this feels like it has so much more breathing room. Okay, I went in, I didn't do a full render like Lee did, but I did do some drawing over, right? And so what I did here was I added a pole, like a telephone pole or something. And what that does is it sort of keeps us, frames us into what's happening here. If you could see here, I also, with the rule of thirds, was putting these characters more on that third, her head more on that line there. Okay. And a couple other things that I did was fix the perspective too, so that there is maybe a horizon line right there. And am I drawing on the right? Yeah, whatever.
I
Horizon line
always
right.
do that.
Yeah. But we have lines here on the sidewalk that are pointing us. Maybe there's some lines here from the roof rafter things that are pointing us down there. You could take this fence, which kind of goes down like that, and just point it up. So it's like that. And maybe this wall here is also coming towards us. And so that just subtly kind of gets us all going in the right direction towards this center character. And then the last thing, I was just framing the character with the objects. So if you look at some of these other objects here, they are receding, but they are all like sort of getting us from going from like big shape to little shape. If you do bigger shapes towards the outer sides, and you do little shapes more closer to the middle, it's just going to want to draw your eye towards some of that detail. And the last thing too was, let's put this dog, point the dog towards the character, so that this dog is also helping us, like, you know, want to focus on that focal point. Okay. All right. So that would be compositional fixes. Now let's talk about character fixes. Okay. So if I were to just draw over these two characters, you could see here this character is so evenly balanced, right? There's really not a lot interesting happening here. And with character design, you want to have things a little there needs to be like a dynamic what's the word I'm looking for? A dynamic line of action. That's what it was. Line. I'm drawing lines left and right. I can't remember the word line. You want to have a dynamic line of action. So this one, the dynamic line of action isn't dynamic at all. It is just a straight line going up. So you want to like think, what would what could I do to add a little bit of an S curve to this and have this character kind of doing something a little bit more interesting, because this is robotic, this is more human. Okay. Same with this dog. This dog is just kind of straight up and across. And none of this is really, it almost feels like an architectural approach to designing characters. And you want to have a little bit more organic, fluid approach to it. Okay. So what I would do here is a more expressive pose. And you can see here with this character that I've sketched out here is I put her on one foot. She's sort of balanced there. We've got this leg and this arm off centering while this arm just stretches up. And I actually, while I was doing this in the middle of it, got up and did that pose and felt it. Right. And I was standing in my office and I was like, if I was reaching, how would I do it? And you could feel like, the whole one side of you is stretching while the other side might be a little more compressed. And it helps to do that. And so if you do that kind of thing, it's going to make your characters a little bit more expressive. And you can, I turn this toe in a little bit here, and you can have like, the hand kind of doing a little bit of an expressive thing right there. And maybe she is a little pigeon toed. It turns in like that. But those are all the little things you want to pay attention to instead of just I'm drawing a character who's doing this. You can see here too, like having the skirt be in 3 dimensions and just instead of just flat. So you can kind of see that there is a character underneath, the clothing. There is anatomy there that just helps us understand this character's pose a little bit better. And I fear like this here just covers so much. The head's covered, the shirt's so baggy, the skirt covers so much of it that really you have to show you have to be more dynamic with what you're showing to really sell that this is a character, not just like a mannequin or something. Okay. So there's that. Then the dog, again, the way I built this dog up was just 3 circles, right? You get those circles in spaces in place where they go, and then it's just going in and adding all the little extra connective tissue in between them. But the circles are the main masses, and that's one of the easiest ways to like do a character design, right? Have this tail come in, so the tail's like pointing us, the nose is pointing us, the whole thing is like directing us towards the girl. Okay, and the other thing you could do though is maybe have the dog facing us and turning his head. And this is a little bit more dramatic pose, so you're not looking at a dog's rump, but you're the dog is like in more of a traditional. I don't want to say traditional. It's more of a iconic dog pose facing us, but the head is turned. Whoops. Head is turned, so that's even more of like a dramatic way to get us to look at the focal point of the girl. Okay. So yeah, so that's how I would approach it. Again, pay close attention to how you're handling the hands. Those things matter. You can always, this is like a rule of thumb for any artist, is look at how they draw hands. An artist is good if the hands are good, right? Like if you see a piece of art and the hands are hidden or the hands are wonky, you could tell that person kind of skipped hand day in the workout, right? So don't sleep on hands and make sure that you keep focusing on that, on making those good. So that's how I would approach it. I do agree with what Lee said. Like I kept being tempted to turn this character to the side and to design, show you a character design where the character is side view, right? And we could see a little bit of her face, and she's reaching really high, right? And
See,
maybe
I
like,
already like that better. I mean, I think as a segue image, the one from the back is great,
mhm.
but as a standalone image, I almost need to see that view. But
I
I mean,
think
it's
though,
arguable.
as a decorative piece, as soon as you turn that character to
Too character driven.
it's, and then it's all about the character instead
I
of the
agree.
mood and the vibe. So
That's true.
I mean, like you were saying, it goes back to the initial concept. Is this a narrative piece, or is this a print that's going to hang on someone's wall that is just there for like garnish and not there for like telling a story, right? Like I have this, my kid went to the thrift store to get a frame. That's like the cheapest place to get frames.
It's true.
Right. And they brought this home. I was like, wait, I want that print, because it was like a print that was already framed, right? And it's this artist right here. I don't know if you've seen this artist before, William Buffett, Buffett, William Buffett. But this is beautiful. It's decorative. Zero story happening here. But this is absolutely something that looks good on a wall, right? And
Right.
so your job as an illustrator is to go more story wise. Like me, I would be so tempted to put like a dog off leash running and a kid like chasing after it, and the dog has like a frisbee in its mouth, right? But that would like completely change this. It'd be less about like capturing the vibe of a, you know, a coastal town, a little village or something like that, and then it turns into a story about a kid and its
Yeah.
runaway
Well,
dog,
what's
right?
interesting, what Jake's saying, as opposed, it kind of goes against what each of us naturally do. It's kind of interesting now that I think about it. That so I was thinking that of it as more of a character driven piece. So if you notice, what I did is zoom into the piece, even that really close up of her putting it in,
Yeah.
and on the even the bigger one, I did still crop in a little bit more, which makes it more about her, turn the character. And then Jake saying, no, 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 let's make it less about her. So he zoomed out.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what I talk about when you're selling prints, is like the more prints you want to sell, the less personal almost you want to make the print, unless it's something really specific like fan art, like Harry Potter or something.
Right.
You got to draw Harry Potter. But if it's just a print that's about feel, like Jake was showing with that print he just showed up, it's more about the overall scene and the overall vibe, and less about specific detail. So you do got to figure out which way you're going. And there's some tried and true techniques that are just natural to it being about a character or it being decorative. And you can really lean into those if you understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So you see, really the focus there for this piece was like, let's make sure it's as beautiful as it can be if the narrative isn't strong. And if it's just about being something decorative and having a vibe, it's really important to make sure that the piece just works well visually, um, uh, uh, constructed well, and colors and everything are just working together to make it look good. If you want to get access to our digital guidebook on how to fix your art, the 200 plus page PDF with all of the information on how to fix your art, fundamentals that you should know and that you should be practicing, plus the checklist, the point by point checklist that you can hold up your artwork next to and go through and see where am I, where am I straying and where am I on. Those are available just as a like a free gift for the annual subscribers of svslearn.com. So you can either subscribe annually and you'll get that, or we just have them available sort of like as an a la carte purchase. The link to that is below, not the comments, but the description. I think that's it. We'll see you next third Thursday for the live stream. You do not want to miss those live streams. We do a lot of extra talking and answering questions and whatnot. So we'd love to see you there. And I think that's it. Catch you next time. Go draw something.